Hey, welcome in. It's Myrtle Beach week. I got my Myrtle Beach. What's the name of their team? Pelicans. The Myrtle Beach Pelicans hat on. There's also a whatever the opposite of an alt tour event in Philadelphia because we never seem to have. This is like the fourth time it feels like since I've been betting golf that Wells Fargo, which is not called Wells Fargo anymore, has been somewhere else because we had a President's Cup. We had the one time I think they were just redoing the course, or definitely what 2017 or 18 they had a PGA at Quail Hollow. For sure, the President's Cup they had to get it ready for that, and we played. God, where was it that we played? Somewhere in like Maryland.
We played Eagle Point in
Eagle Point, yep.
2017, in North Carolina. So it's moved a lot.
But Wissahickon, Philly cricket. I listened to Andy Lack's podcast yesterday when I went for a walk. I like that he just called it Philly cricket instead of trying to say the hard part of the name. It's funny too. I kind of agreed with how he broke down the course. Because obviously, a lot of times Noonan will pull up the course sheet and we'll look at things like, oh, how often people pull the driver out of the bag. And we'll compare it to a 5-year average. And we'll compare it to the, PGA average. And we'll look at, the average shots in and how the distribution of approach shots are. Well, we don't have 5 years of history here. This is like handicapping, honestly, like Valhalla last year. It's like, hey, not only a new stop, but a new stop we haven't looked at before. It's not even one of those ones that's been in the major rota for most of the things. So what did you lean on this week, Ron, when you started? Like clean slate heading into the week, want to run your stats? What did you start on as far as trying to figure out what the key stats are this week?
Yeah, there's going to be a ton, and there already has been a ton of different takes on this course,
sure.
But we're really not going to know anything for sure until players go out there on Thursday. And I think one of the smartest things, as far as me researching a new course, is kind of trying to dive in and find what members have said. Obviously, the course is going to play a little different. It's going to be tougher than a normal week for them. But again, they're not going to like completely transform the course, for their members either. So I think the PGA Tour typically, when they select these courses, I don't think they've ever selected anything challenging. So, I know I hear some people say it's going to be really tough. Some people say easy. But, I think it's going to kind of be somewhere in that middle area. It's definitely a course that has some demanding holes, and it has some holes that seem very scoreable. So I think it's a really good blend. Obviously Tillinghast is one of the best architects. We're talking these kind of in this category of old school classical courses. And so, I think it's going to be a really interesting week. From what I've heard from a few of the players is that it's a really intriguing course that they like. The holes are actually fun to play. And so I think that always makes a difference. But stat wise, as far as, I think there's some overarching themes. So it's forgiving off the tee, yet there's, many holes where you still want to be on the right side of the fairway. If you're missing on the wrong side, you're basically going to have a really bad angle to the green. And these are greens that are very challenging. So that's going to matter. I think for me, I think what I'm seeing, and when you consider how short the course is, so par 70, 100 yards, you have some really short holes, like the par 3, one of them is only 122 yards. You only have 2 par 5s. So you kind of got these 12 par 4s. 9 of them are under 450 yards. You do have three that are quite long. So it's a very interesting course when you look at the measurements and the distances, but I'm siding with accuracy over distance right now. I just think, when you look, even the layout of some of the holes, the fairways do tend to widen once you get out past 300 yards. So they're not super narrow. They're about 32 yards wide on average. So for me, I think off the tee, I'm going to be focusing more on, distance from edge of the fairway, guys who can control their tee shots. And then, when we get into, these greens, I think first of all, before you get to the greens, these bunkers are very penal. They're very deep. And so I think around the green play is going to be huge this week. And then just trying to once you're on these greens, they're very diverse. They're firm. They're going to play fast around 12 and a half, 13 on the stent meter. And they're very undulating. Now they don't look real slopey, especially when you look at some of the videos and photos of these holes. But they're very subtle with how much they break. So I think this is a course where, and this is going to be interesting because nobody's ever played this course as far as in tournament play before, any of these PGA guys. And so it's kind of a course where you want to know where to miss on these greens, and it's something that players are going to have to figure out quickly. But just to sum it all up here, I think for me, putting is going to be really big this week. I'm going to be looking at 5 to 15 feet, looking at bent greens, looking at fast greens. And I'm still trying to get a handle on approach distances. I think there's going to be plenty of wedges and, looking at 150 yards and in, but you're going to have a decent number of mid to long irons as well. So I'm not going to get too in the weeds on approach.
Yeah, I mean, echoing some of the stuff that Andy Lack had said on his podcast. I don't know if you had a chance to look at his model or take in any of his content, but outside of so what I've done so far is, like I said, I listened to his podcast. I read your preview article. I looked at the course a little, some aerial whatnots, and kind of get a feel for, exactly what we're looking at. And it does feel like it's trying to be hard, but it's just not going to be able to be hard because golfers at this level are so good and it's not very long. It's just, and like you said, the fairways are not that narrow. The rough is getting grown up, but I mean, if you have 30, 35 foot landing areas or yards wide, and guys who are accurate enough and have, a good enough total drive the ball well and accurate, they're going to be hitting such short shots into these greens. And like you said, around the green is going to matter because there are some longer shots that are going to happen, especially on some of these longer fours and obviously the 2.5s. But there's going to be so many opportunities for birdies. Whereas, like you said, we need to figure out where to miss on some of these greens. But about half of the greens, you're just pin seeking with a wedge. Like if you drive the ball well enough and you're in the fairway, it's not a hard approach shot. There's going to be a ton of birdie opportunities. I think scoring is going to be low, not like last week low. It's not Craig Ranch 30 under, but half of that probably better. If somebody really goes nuts with their putter, they can cut away from the pack and maybe threaten 20 under, but probably somewhere 15-ish. It feels like it's tough to say until we see it go play. I think it's going to be a little softer up there as well. And like you said, you're going to have to look at putting a little more. Maybe spike putting, guys who can spike it with that, guys who can spike it with the short to middle irons. And then, like you said, overarching theme for off the tee is probably accuracy over distance, because there's not a lot of holes where the distance guys are going to have some huge advantage. Like, oh, I can cut the corner here and you can't, or I can drive over that. Honestly, next week there's a few spots like that, but spots where you're going to have to lay up here and I'm not going to. So I don't know if the big distance guys are going to be having this huge advantage, even though it's a short course, maybe because it's a short course. So I haven't completely built my model. It's funny. I went to look for models from last year. Obviously, I don't have a cricket grounds model. So I did have a Myrtle Beach one. It says Russell Henley #1, which honestly, that should check out. He's very good, but I'm going to build something here for this one. It sucks, like, because it feels like it's a waste. I love having my models from last year that I can pull up. This is like what you do for majors, where it's like, well, I'll look at this one again in 7 years or whatever. Hopefully never again for the Valhalla model I have from last year. But I'm going to put something together. It's going to be short irons. It's going to be mid irons. It's going to be putting. It's going to be accuracy, maybe like you said, distance from the edge of the fairway, and then probably just like overall form. It's not one. I know last week Scotty ran away with it, but imagine Scotty wasn't in the field. There was a ton of goofy names in the top 10 and 20. Like last week was a variance week who just happened to have a god in their midst. Like a course like last week lends itself to mid players making their way up the leaderboard. Whereas I think even though I'm saying this one's a little easier, I think some of these guys were just really good. I mean, it sets up for sadly, like Rory might just do what Scotty did last week, where the way he's hitting his approach right now, it's like, oh, he's gonna hit it 325 down the middle and then have a wedge on this 4. Like he's gonna have, six times over the course of the round. It's like, oh, there's another 4-footer for birdie. Just because if these greens are receptive, it doesn't matter how fast they are if you're 4 feet away. So I think it's gonna probably be a bigger name this week. That's kind of where I've looked. I'm not gonna go too far into the long shots like last week. Not that it mattered. Although it was a little bit of a thrill to see Johnny Vegas shoot up the leaderboard. I had 275 to 1 on him. Like, oh, we're live for about 6 hours, and then Scotty picks his clubs up and didn't watch a whole lot of golf over the weekend, honestly.
Yeah,
I don't know your thoughts, your overall betting card here.
Yeah, it's a tricky week to take a firm stance on a type of player just because we don't know for sure. Like I could see Rory, like when you look at the course from overhead on video, like there's not a lot of trouble as far as water hazards. There's 3 creeks that kind of run through the course at different points, but that's not really in play much off the tee. And so I could literally see a guy like Rory just saying, okay, I'm just going to bomb away. And look, the rough at the start of the week is only 3 inches. Now it might get a little longer as we go towards Sunday, but I mean, guys have played it much worse than that. And so, I also read into some of the tournament directors and officials basically saying that this is not a course where you can just bomb and gouge. I know I talked about the angles, it's a course where you have to play the angles. So, but I could see someone like Rory, as good as he's hitting it, like off the tee, if he's finding fairways, yes, I could see him going and doing something like that where he can run away with it. But with the short nature of this course, with all the wedges to short irons coming in, I'm just gonna probably take a stance and kind of fade that top part of the board. And I put a tweet out there yesterday. I think, speaking of the rabbit hole here, something that's interesting to look at. And in the PGA Tour, there's been, I don't know, maybe a few events each year out here, kind of in the northeast, eastern part of the country. You have these bent greens, or like when we go to TPC, River Highlands, you got the bent mixed with the POA. But overall, just looking at, okay, so let's go back, 5 years and see who's played well in the Northeast, bent greens. You got, Patrick Cantlay comes right to the top. And of course, he's got that reputation of, being so good, winning in Wilmington. And, just plays really well up here. And he's got a pretty sizable margin, pretty decent sample size too. When you go back and look, last 40 or so rounds, 5 years, well over, I think he's at just over 2 strokes per round. And Rory is second at 179. Xander's third at 176 per round. So for me, as far as my betting card, I think Xander has just drifted a little too low here. I got him at 18 to 1. I just think he's playing much better than his finishing position has showed recently. His ball striking's been right there. So I think this is a course where you kind of need that all around game. And I think Xander has a really good chance this week. I think some people are sleeping on him. So I thought that was really good value. I think JT as well. I think he's a guy who, when you look at the putting numbers, I mean, if you just look at, and I rarely look at this, but I was, I'm adding stuff to the rabbit hole. We've got a bunch of new filters coming soon. So I happened to stumble on the PGA Tour, just looking at just raw putting average for this year. And JT is number 1 in the entire PGA Tour in just raw putting average. And so, if he's really fixed that part of his game, this is a course that just fits very well for him. You have to shape the ball. You've got a lot of uneven lies on this course. And so I think, when you're talking short wedges, short irons, I think this is a course that he can take advantage of. And I think, coming off the victory, I think this is a week for him to keep it going. So I got those two guys kind of on the top of my board. There's a few other names, down lower that I like. A guy like, I think Wyndham Clark, who's got another great, wedge game. I think he's
somebody brought him up too. Yeah.
Yep. So.
Not only the wedge game, the short irons, but like scrambling / around the green. Like if you remember him at LACC, which obviously way different course, way different event, maybe not that different of a field. This is a tough field too. But like every time he got in trouble, his around the green stuff on those were tough complexes around the green. And he would just, another little dart to 2 feet, another little dart to 18 inches. Like he was really good around that. I've gone back and forth and around the green because I think these greens are going to be easy to hit. So I think I don't want to throw it out though, because like you said, there's still the 5s. There's a couple of pretty long 4s. And I don't know that the par 3s are going to be terribly easy. So I think around the green is going to come into play. I just haven't decided how much to weigh it, because I think about half of this golf course is just going to be everybody hits the screen. Like these are easy. Maybe some of the guys who get themselves in trouble. And also the bomb and gouge thing too, I've been back and forth on. Like you read that quote and it's like, well, maybe that's true for the members. But I mean, I think there's been so many people that have gained so much, club speed over the last 5 years, and not all of them have like sacrificed accuracy for it. Whereas, back in the day, some of the people who really, really hit the ball a long ways, they just weren't accurate. It felt like you had one or the other. And, there were very few people who could do it both. Whereas a lot of these guys who hit the bombs, they can hit it pretty, accurately as well. And I know it took Rory a little while to get that. Obviously, when he gained his speed and his distance, he had a little bit of a miss there for a while. But some of these guys who can hit it that far and accurate, they're just going to tear apart about half of these holes. And that's where I think the scoring is going to come from, is just like, oh, this hole is going to play like half a stroke under par for the field this week.
Yeah, the finishing stretch of holes is going to be a challenge, but I agree with you. I think the front 9 especially, guys are going to be able to take advantage of some of these. Again, that's the thing is though, it's like, okay, so there's so many possible tricky pin locations that they could use here. So it's going to be interesting to see like how tough are they going to try to make these greens as far as putting goes. And that's where I come back to like a guy like a JT or, I'm not betting Morikawa. I don't know when I will ever bet him again. But I think those two guys, just with their pinpoint accuracy, they can get some stuff done on this course. And that's why I would have, it's going to be real interesting to see, Rory, can he continue the positive short iron play, the control, being able to control and dial those wedges in. So from that perspective, and again, I don't think it's going to help them that much in preparing for Quail Hollow next week, because that's a big boy course, a lot of drivers, a lot of long irons. So just interesting to see, if Rory can keep it going this week for sure.
Yeah, not stuff I've added to the model per se, but I have looked a lot at just the iron splits, and JT is somebody that his name was on my radar pretty quick too. He's somebody I've discussed a lot with, when I talk one and done with Cal, and we just don't ever know what to do with this guy because he's been so hot and cold over the last 3 years now. I mean, this guy he's a major winner not that long ago. And he also had to go play the 3M to try to get into the playoffs not that long ago. So coming into the year, he was a little bit hard to figure out, but if the putting is going to be where the putting is for him now, he's, clearly top 5. Like his irons are so pure. He does everything else well. The putting he was getting in trouble and having blow up holes. And then obviously the putting wasn't there either. And suddenly the scoring just fucking falls off a cliff. So I pulled up fairway 100 to 125. He's first, 125 to 150. He's fifth. Like short irons, wedges, obviously he's a god. And, like you mentioned, his putting has just gone
Yep.
up and to the right, hard. I mean, he's just
Click on his name.
Click
on his name, and I looked at this earlier. His rolling record. So we'll go down to the strokes gained summary. So this is amazing. So you can just see
right here.
Yep. And off the tee, like, you see a little bit of, but he's struggled for a while, a little bit here and there. I don't think this is a course that's going to hurt him that much, though. Obviously, with the lack of hazards, and so I just think the improvements he made. I mean, even admitting that he got help from Xander, which a lot of guys don't want to admit that they had to seek help from another player, but I think whatever it is, it's working.
Yeah, and if you're listening in podcast form, pop over to his player page on the site. Like his last 200 rounds, he's losing 0.2 of a stroke putting, and then as you go up, last 50, last 24, last 12, he's gaining 1.5. It's been just so much more better. His short game over the last 12 in total is 2 strokes around. If you're going to do that, him being a meh off the tee guy doesn't really matter, because if you're going to be a guy who gains almost a stroke per round in approach and 2 on your short game, you're just going to score, because it's not like he's bad off the tee. He's just meh. And that's probably going to be fine here. Like I said, I don't think these bombers are going to have some massive advantage over guys who are just fine off the tee. So JT is definitely on the radar, not only for betting, but for one and done. I kind of agree with you on Xander. Coming into the year, obviously the injury was a bit of a bugaboo, but just thinking about where I'd placed him in my mind coming into the year, I had him just on par, and maybe not on par, but right behind Scotty and Rory. Like, he's clearly 3 in my mind, and he's not being priced accordingly because obviously of the results and the injury there. And then Cantlay, I think everyone loves him here, but he's another one too. It's like JT. It's like he's just gonna win sometime. He's good enough. It's been so long. He's another one where it's been a couple years since he's popped off a win. And where else but maybe here, or like you said, Travelers. It'd be a likely spot for him to just play really well here.
Agreed. Yep.
Did you play? I mean, down the board. Obviously, fading Rory. Looking at some of the longer names. I like I said, I didn't want to go crazy and bet some 200-1 shots here because of obviously the field is smaller. You just don't have that. You don't have that many names in it, and it's a no cut event like this. But looking further down the board, other than Wyndham Clark, who I agreed with you with, there wasn't a lot that stuck out for me.
Yeah, we don't there have been times over the past year with these signature events where we've seen guys like, Matthew Pavone, who kind of, outlasted everyone. But I think this is a week where, you're going to see a bigger name. I think for me, I think Thomas Dietrich is a little interesting. I don't know what he's at right now, but I got him at 150. I think he's a guy who, look, you're going to want guys who can putt this week. You don't want guys, for me, I'm looking away completely from the team no putt guys. And so I want guys who can really focus in and hit those 5 to 15 footers who have shown. And again, that's what the rabbit hole is so great for, is you can look at difficult greens and you can kind of see who's putted well on tough greens in the past. And so Dietrich's a guy who I just think overall he's been kind of hit or miss lately, but he got that first win earlier in the year in Phoenix. And so, I think for me, I'm not, he's pretty much my only guy way down the board, but I just thought there was some good value with him at 151.
Yeah. There's some names that I bet over and over that are down the board, like Jaeger's 145. He's a guy I look at a lot. Michael Kim, who was, I don't think he's done anything wrong to, get off that train. Maybe he's a good top 20 bet, 90-1. Minwoo Lee, it might be a nice course for him, but he's only 60. It's probably going to be a small card because I'm going to bet on some Myrtle Beach guys too. And, I got guys that I've bet, guys that I like that are down in Myrtle Beach as well on I don't know, call it what it is. It's like a It's a resort course. Like it's good. There's good golf courses in that area. It's fine, but it's an all tour event, and the field obviously reflects that. I'm looking at my guy Hoey there. I don't know who's favored. Kevin Yu, Mackenzie Hughes, Tom Kim. I don't know if you dug into that at all. I'm probably betting just real quick Harry Hall. I'm betting Rico. Is Rico still? Yeah, Rico Hoey, 40-1. Harry Hall like 28-30. Probably Chan Kim. I like Chan Kim. Always be betting him at the smaller events. He's gonna pop one of these times for me for sure. Myrtle Beach probably doesn't take a lot of handicapping. Just find some guys that can score there.
Yeah, it's an easier course. I have not completely dived in yet, even from last year. So it's these alternate events. By next year, I'm hoping to have these on par with the regular events. Once we're done adding all this rabbit hole stuff, I've been doing a lot of that lately. But this is an event I did put some stuff on a few guys. Completely ignoring the top of the board here. Like there's just no way. Even a guy like Tom Kim, who has win equity. He's just struggling so bad right now. So like I kind of started in kind of that mid 50s range. Hisatsune has been really playing these last 3 months, and so there's some really good value with him at 55. I think Norlander. I just think this is a course where you saw Goddard go pretty low last year. I think Norlander has the approach game. If he can just kind of get consistent on the greens and off the tee. I think Joel Damon, I think there's some good value there with him. We just saw him come very close in Corrales. He's sitting there at 60. Davis Riley, a guy who's won a couple times, been playing much better recently in the last month or two. So, they're all sitting down there in that range. Even a guy like Nicholas Norgard, who, like, I don't know what he's at now, but I got him at 66-1 on Rivers yesterday. And so he's a guy who, a lot of people don't know about, coming over from Europe, big hitter.
Yeah, Danish.
Yeah, go really low. So, it's an interesting field. I mean, it's actually much not strong at the top, but, there's a lot of guys here, on this mid-range who could very easily win this week.
Yeah, my model from last year has Trace Crow top. I might need to recalibrate things there a little. Probably not betting Trace Crow, but Smalley Hall makes sense up top. So does Hoey. Bo Hostler. Let's see what I put in. I put total driving, just last 12 months, overall proximity around the green, and birdies are better. Just like go out there, score, stay out of the water. There's quite a bit of water. At this course, there's some heavy bunkering. You can get yourself in trouble, but it's still like if you're not a screw up and you don't do something stupid, you're gonna be able to score here. So, Damon, and who's the other one you just mentioned? Gosh, Davis Riley, kind of in the same boat for me. Like it's like maybe people aren't paying attention because they're not competing at big events. But those guys have been playing a lot better lately, especially Joel, who had some pretty rough stretches for a while, and is very good golfer when he's on. Like those are names that can absolutely win events like this, and they're like 60-1. So I agree with you on Joel. I agree with you on Davis Riley. Chan Kim, I'm just never going to quit. And then I'm betting Hui until he pays off.
Yeah, even a guy like Danny Walker, who's been kind of, popping at some different events here, playing pretty well last week. He's sitting there at 80-1. So it's a week where I think you're much smarter taking some chances on the board, taking some long shots.
Yeah, it is kind of the opposite. Whereas I'm probably, it's probably going to be a pretty small card. It might, honestly, my card might just be Xander JT. And I don't know who else from there at the Truist. Because, some of the names down the board, I don't know if I like Sepp Straka. I'm excited about a little bit, but he's only like 40. I'm not that excited. Daniel Berger, I've liked his arc, but he's like 35, 30. I don't know if I'm that excited in this small of a field. So Spieth is interesting. He's rounding into form at the right time. Wouldn't that be wild if we ended up with 7 men in the history of all the world of golf that had a career slam, and we got 2 within like a month? 2 of them happened within a month. I'm not saying it's going to be easy or he should be you should bet on him or even think about betting on him, but like it's Spieth, and Spieth can pull rounds out of his ass, and he's still a very good golfer. He's kind of playing well at the right time. I'm not betting him this week, but I might have to put a small bet on him next week just for the nostalgic factor. I can't remember the last time I bet on Jordan Spieth to win a tournament.
I mean, I can't remember the last time he won. I think we're looking at 3+ years. So yeah, I know what you're saying. He has these rounds where, he just goes back and forth like a roller coaster, not only from round to round, but like within the round, as everybody knows, where he'll get a 7 on one hole and then he'll come back and he'll just get an amazing birdie. And so that's, the Jordan Spieth experience is definitely not something like leaning into for betting purposes, because I'm not putting anything on that. And I need to see it. I don't know if Quail Hollow is the best course for him either. So, I think the Slam is going to be, not saying he's never going to win a major again, but I think that's going to be something tough. That's going to be waiting. We're going to be waiting on for a while.
Yeah, his last win was the RBC Heritage in 2022.
Yeah.
When he won in a playoff over Patrick Cantlay, who that wasn't so. Cantlay did win the BMW that year, so I think that was Cantlay's last win. Cantlay is actually kind of horrible in playoffs. Because he lost to St. Jude to Glover as well in the playoff. Rich S says, I still have Rory. Should I run him out this week and one and done?
No. Next week,
man.
If you're going to do it. I would go next week for sure.
Next week's bigger money.
That's his course.
Yeah, it's close. It's
course.
Close. Yeah, I think if you've saved it depends who you have, and it depends where you're sitting. If you're in the lead, I feel like next week is a good chance to use him because everybody is creaming their panties over Bryson DeChambeau, and with one and done, there's only 3 spots you can use him now. I really doubt a lot of people used him at the Masters. So it feels like a heavy Bryson week next week. And you could definitely zigzag on the field a little by going Rory. Not that Rory won't be popular. I think people did save him here, but there's going to be so many people that feel like they have to use a live golfer because there's, it's like a bonus chance to use a golfer that's not in their pool, and you only have so many spots. So it's going to be a ton of Bryson next week. God, maybe even some Rahm. Rahm hasn't done anything wrong on the live. Like, he's playing good golf. He's playing golf is just fine. And Bryson obviously as well. So Rory might be a nice one to use next week if you did save him this long. I haven't written my one and done article. I'm not sure where I would go with it this week, but man, where else? It feels like it's here or, Cromwell. Where else are you going to use Cantlay? He might be popular this week as well, but Cantlay's a good one to use here. It's a signature event. You can't go too far down the board. You don't want to use, some throwaway name here. It's a big purse. So you got to use a big name. So for me, maybe even Colin, even though I wouldn't want to bet him here. It's not a bet, but it's a definitely a look for one and done. Colin, Cantlay, Fleetwood, and JT. JT's probably a look here.
My top 3 would be Xander 1. I think Xander, if you have Xander available this week, for me that's a no-brainer. I think Cantlay would be number 2 just because of his history, and probably JT 3. And just really quick on next week, if you're thinking about Rory this week, should I save Rory for next week? What about Scotty next week? Well, again, Scotty, I don't know if most people know this, but Scotty has never played Quail Hollow during a tournament event. He has always skipped that event. And, I think that tells you a lot. Like when you have guys who skip certain courses, and obviously, I know the Byron Nelson is an event that usually does come before Quail Hollow. And so he doesn't like to play too many weeks in a row. But I still think you can read into that a little bit with maybe, doesn't like the course as much. And so for me next week, if you have Rory available, like he's won what, I can't remember how many times he's won at Quail Hollow, at least twice. Yeah, that's what I'm doing next week.
Yeah, it's a good slot for him. So stick to the top of the board. Like I'm pretty much in agreement with you there, JT. Although I would throw Fleetwood in. Not that Tommy Fleetwood wins tournaments, but if you get a Rory runaway, or one of these other names runs away with it, or it just ends up being a big name, it doesn't feel like Tommy's too far behind them ever. Like Tommy top 10, Tommy top 5, he's going to be right there, and he's so good. Short irons, he's been good with these courses like this where you can score easily. So he's going to be right there. It just it's so hard to bet that guy to win a tournament. He doesn't when he's here. He wins them on the other tour.
And if you're looking at that same theme, I mean, not that I would do this, but even for DFS this week, like I think Corey Connors, Russell Henley, guys who, even a Shane Lowry, I think this type of course fits all three of those guys really well. Ball strikers who are, really good with their wedges and can get hot on the greens. And so, those are three guys, maybe for me, from a more DFS perspective, I would lean into if you're looking for, some consistency. But yeah, Fleetwood I see what you're saying with Fleetwood. You don't expect him to win. Because he never has. But he's always, if you're looking just for a top finish, there's a pretty good chance, Tommy's going to be up there this week.
And it does feel like, was he in the playoff with Nick Taylor at the Canadian Open? Was he the other one?
Yeah. Yep.
Like the stuff it takes to beat him is wild. Like he's been so close. It's another one. Like if I'm going to say, well, Patrick Cantlay has to win again, it's not as if Tommy Fleetwood has never won a golf tournament. He's won, in the European Tour. He's a winner. It just some reason he's just a close but no cigar guy here. And sometimes it takes an 80-foot putt in the playoff to beat him, apparently. God, I think we had a TIO in that with a shot into the bleachers. That was a wild playoff. Like I was kind of rooting for Tommy. Obviously that was a crazy moment and it turned out to be an awesome moment for those Canadians, but like I'd like to see him get one done. So he's definitely somebody you could look at here if you wanted to save some of those other names, or if you've burnt through a lot of the names at the top of the board early on.
Yep.
Oh, I don't know. Any other thoughts on this or Dirty Myrtle?
No. I think it's going to be a fun week to watch. Good course, classical course. Really looking to see the last four holes, starting with the par 5, 15th. They're kind of switched the course around, but this great hazard hole, I don't know if you've seen that part on the video where you have this massive waste area with, bunkers.
Oh, there's just like 10 bunkers right next to each other.
Yeah. So going to be interesting to see, guys got to try to avoid that, if they're going for the green. But yeah, and then these last 3 holes, you got some really long par 3 and 2 long par 4. So finishing stretch, seeing how this course looks on TV, that's going to be the highlight of my week. Yeah,
that's on a par 5, correct? That big waste area.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of people should be able to clear it, but there's not a ton of decisions here, I don't think, but that's definitely one of them. Is this a 3-shot hole, or is it a 2-shot hole for you? And if you don't get it clean and you end up in that, it's pretty messy because you might miss the bunker and end up in just like garbage. There's like tall grass and stuff in there. It's look up a picture of that. I had a shot of it in the newsletter we sent out last year when we were looking ahead to the PGA, because I said, well, if the PGA is at Guelph Hollow, what are we doing with Wells Fargo / Truist? And I saw that picture when I was doing a little research. I'm like, Jesus, that's a disaster. Like they just threw a whole. I'm guessing most members don't try to clear it.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
I think it's about 3. You got to carry about 3 bills to get over that, which is it'll be fun. I will be cheering for some people to end up in the shit on that one, because I don't know what you do at that point. You're 300 yards from the hole scrambling for par.
Yeah, and a lot of good rabbit hole stuff you can get into this week. If you want to look at short courses, if you want to look at strong fields, and we got a lot of updates, a lot of filters are about to be added here in the next couple weeks as well. So keep an eye on that.
Yeah, I'll have a model up later. I'm sure you will as well. Noonan is sick today. That's why he's not here. But I will prod him to build his model. I did share my Myrtle Beach model. I toggled that back on if you want to take a look at that. It's from last year. I think I said Russell Henley was at the top of that one. He's not. He's definitely in the other field. I think I meant Rico Hoey. I mix up my man crush golfers, I suppose, but I'll have that up later. We'll have a one and done article up later. Ron will have his betting card up later. If you want to check out all the premium content and play with the rabbit hole, look at all the filters, all the official PGA data, sorted out by however you want to look at it. $30 a month. There's discount codes. If you want one, TM us. I'll give you a discount code just for being cool. You can get a free year if you live in a state or are near a state or are visiting a state that has MGM available. You sign up for MGM using our promo code BetSpurtsGolf, and deposit and play $10. After that bet settles, so don't play a Super Bowl future for $10 because it's after the bet settles. You'll get a promo code for a free year, which is a $250 value of BetSpurtsGolf. Check that out. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, there'll be some notes in the description on that. And we'll be back with you guys next week for Major Week. Quail Hollow, PGA, second major of the year. Pretty exciting stuff. Good luck this week, all your bets at both courses. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything else, you can hit us up on the comments here or on Twitter at PGA Splits 101, at Andy MSFW, or at BetSpurtsGolf, and we'll see you guys next week.